Let me be direct with you from the outset, because what unfolded across Israel between 2:47 and 2:52 a.m. local time on May 11th, 2026 demands directness. What we witnessed was not a cyber attack. It was not a lone wolf operation. It was not, as several hastily assembled press conferences have suggested, a technical malfunction across multiple utility providers. What we witnessed was a coordinated physical assault on 15 separate nodes of Israel's national power infrastructure, executed with military precision, completed in under 6 minutes, and followed by something even more significant: silence. Calculated, deliberate silence from Tehran. I am looking at damage assessment reports that have been circulating among regional security analysts for the past 72 hours, and I need you to walk through this with me, because what these documents reveal is not amateur sabotage or opportunistic terrorism. What they reveal is actionable intelligence, pre-positioned assets, and operational planning that required months, possibly years, of preparation. The 15 target sites were not randomly selected. They were not the most visible or the most heavily guarded. They were, according to 3 separate Israeli grid engineers who spoke to Haaretz under condition of anonymity, the exact pressure points where simultaneous failure would cascade through the entire system. In the next 18 minutes, I am going to walk you through exactly why this attack represents a fundamental shift in regional deterrence calculations, why Tehran's refusal to either confirm or deny responsibility is itself a strategic message, and why what happens in the next 72 to 96 hours will determine whether we are looking at contained escalation or something far more dangerous. This is the kind of analysis you are not getting from CNN, not getting from BBC, and certainly not getting from officials whose primary concern is managing public perception rather than conveying operational reality. Subscribe now if you have not already, because what we are about to cover is being actively debated inside the Pentagon, inside Israeli military headquarters, and inside the Iranian Supreme National Security Council at this very moment. Let's start with the infrastructure itself, because understanding what was hit matters more than the fact that it was hit at all. Israel's power grid is not a single centralized system. It is a distributed network with redundancy built into every layer, specifically to prevent the kind of cascading failure that occurred on May 11th. The Israel Electric Corporation operates the national grid through a series of regional control centers, each managing multiple substations, transformers, and switching stations. Under normal circumstances, if one substation goes offline, load automatically redistributes to neighboring nodes. The system is designed to absorb localized failures without affecting the broader network. The 15 sites attacked were spread across 3 distinct geographic zones: 5 in the north near Haifa and the Lebanese border, 7 in the central corridor between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, 3 in the south near Beersheba. According to reporting by both the Times of Israel and confirmed by statements from Energy Minister Eli Cohen, all 15 sites experienced what Israeli investigators are describing as explosive device detonations targeting transformer banks and primary switching equipment. To put that in perspective, these are not components you can disable with a wrench or a pair of bolt cutters. These are systems housed in secure compounds, monitored by security cameras, and in several cases, protected by military patrols. The explosives used were, according to preliminary forensic analysis cited by Channel 12 News, compact, professionally manufactured, and placed with precision to maximize damage while minimizing casualties. 0 fatalities have been reported. This matters. If the objective were terrorism for its own sake, soft targets produce higher body counts. If the objective were symbolic disruption, a single high-profile site generates more media attention. But if the objective is demonstrating capability, proving reach, and sending a specific message to military planners rather than the general public, you do exactly what was done here. You hit critical infrastructure, you do it simultaneously across a wide geographic area, and you do it in a way that screams operational competence. Subscribe if you are watching this and realizing that the narrative you have been hearing about amateurish militant groups or lone wolf attacks does not align with what actually happened here. Now, let's talk about what Tehran has actually said, and more importantly, what Tehran has deliberately refused to say. Announcement number one, the silence is the strategy. And this one matters more than anything else, because in Middle Eastern geopolitical signaling, what is not said is often more important than what is said. Within 6 hours of the attacks, Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Nasser Kanani held a scheduled press briefing. When asked directly by a Reuters correspondent whether Iran had any involvement in the Israeli power grid attacks, Kanani responded, and I am quoting him directly here, "By try distare di antent." Iran reserves the right to respond to Israeli aggression through all available means. We will not provide operational details of our defensive measures. Indeed, he did not deny involvement. He did not condemn the attacks. He did not call for investigations or express concern about regional stability. He described the attacks as potential Iranian defensive measures and then refused further comment. Compare that response to how Tehran has historically handled accusations of covert operations. When Israel accused Iran of involvement in the 2012 bus bombing in Bulgaria, Tehran issued immediate and categorical denials. When the United States accused Iran of mining tankers in the Gulf of Oman in 2019, Tehran called the accusations fabrications and demanded proof. But in this case, when directly asked about an operation that required years of planning, penetration of Israeli security, and pre-positioning of assets inside Israeli territory, Tehran's response is not denial. It is strategic ambiguity wrapped in a thinly veiled threat. According to analysis published by the International Institute for Strategic Studies, this represents what they describe as calibrated escalation. Iran wants Israel to know this was Iranian retaliation for recent Israeli strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities in Natanz and Isfahan. Iran wants regional observers to understand that Israeli infrastructure is vulnerable despite billions spent on homeland security. But Iran does not want to provide the explicit confirmation that would legally obligate Israel to respond with large-scale military action. So Tehran walks the line. Deny nothing. Confirm nothing. Let the operation speak for itself. The political calculation here is sophisticated. If Iran had claimed credit immediately, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu would face enormous domestic pressure to launch strikes on Iranian territory. But without an explicit admission, Netanyahu faces a different problem. He cannot rally international support for retaliation based on suspicion alone. He cannot justify large-scale military action based on forensic analysis that is still ongoing. He is trapped in the same ambiguity that Tehran deliberately created. Received. That is announcement number one. Announcement number two, the operational sophistication reveals years of preparation. This is the part that Israeli military analysts have confirmed, but that Western media is consistently underreporting. The 15 attack sites were not vulnerable locations. According to Defense News and confirmed by statements from former Israeli Defense Forces Colonel Kobi Maram, each of the targeted substations had recently undergone security upgrades following intelligence warnings about potential sabotage threats. Security cameras had been installed. Perimeter fencing had been reinforced. In at least 4 cases, the sites were under active surveillance by private security contractors. Yet the explosives were placed, armed, and detonated without detection. The only plausible explanation, according to Maram and 3 other military analysts quoted in Yedioth Ahronoth, is that the devices were pre-positioned weeks or months before the attacks. This means operatives had to conduct reconnaissance, identify precise placement points, gain access to secure facilities, install the explosives, and then trigger them remotely on command. That is not a capability you develop overnight. That is not a capability most state intelligence services possess, let alone non-state militant groups. Stay with me, because this is where the narrative completely changes and where the implications for Israeli security doctrine become impossible to ignore. The explosives were detonated using what Israeli investigators believe was a combination of timer triggers and remote activation. According to reporting by I-24 News, electronic signatures detected at 3 of the sites suggest cellular network communication in the minutes before detonation. This indicates a triggering mechanism that could be activated from anywhere in the world. The operatives who planted the devices did not need to be present when they were detonated. They could have left Israel weeks ago. They could be in Tehran, Beirut, Damascus, or Baghdad. The operational security built into this attack makes attribution difficult and retaliation complicated. And here's what almost nobody in the mainstream media is connecting correctly. This attack occurred exactly 17 days after Israel conducted what it described as defensive airstrikes against Iranian uranium enrichment facilities in Natanz. Those strikes destroyed centrifuge cascades, set back Iran's nuclear program by an estimated 6 to 9 months, and killed 4 Iranian nuclear scientists. Israel believed, based on statements from Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, that the strikes would reestablish deterrence and force Iran into a defensive posture. Instead, 17 days later, Iran demonstrated that it can reach inside Israeli territory, strike critical infrastructure, avoid detection, and do so with a level of coordination that suggests deeper penetration than Israeli intelligence previously believed possible. The reason Israeli security officials are not sleeping well tonight is the same reason Pentagon analysts are urgently reassessing Israeli vulnerability. If Iran can hit 15 sites simultaneously, what prevents them from hitting 50 next time? What prevents them from targeting water treatment facilities, natural gas terminals, or telecommunications hubs? The operational template has been established. The capability has been demonstrated, and Tehran has made clear it will not hesitate to use it again if Israeli strikes on Iranian soil continue. Received and that's so insuri. That is announcement number 2. Announcement number 3, and this one almost nobody in the mainstream media is discussing. The attack exposes a fundamental flaw in Israel's security prioritization. Israel spends approximately $24 billion annually on defense, making it one of the highest per capita military spenders in the world. The majority of that budget goes to Iron Dome missile defense, fighter jet procurement, intelligence gathering, and offensive capabilities. According to data published by the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, less than 8% of Israel's defense budget is allocated to critical infrastructure protection. That is not an accident. That is a strategic choice based on the assumption that Israel's best defense is overwhelming offensive capability. But offensive capability does not protect power grids. It does not protect water systems. It does not prevent pre-positioned explosives from detonating inside Israeli territory. The attack on May 11th revealed that while Israel has invested heavily in preventing rocket attacks from Gaza and missile strikes from Hezbollah, it has systematically underfunded the protection of the infrastructure that keeps Israeli society functioning. Think carefully about what this represents. Israel has one of the most sophisticated militaries in the world. It has nuclear weapons, advanced cyber capabilities, and intelligence networks that reach deep into hostile territory. Yet 15 explosives, likely costing less than $50,000 in total, caused an estimated $200 million in damage, disrupted power to 2 million people, and forced emergency grid management protocols that took 36 hours to fully restore normal operations. The cost-benefit ratio from an attacker's perspective is extraordinary. The vulnerability it exposes is profound. Received. That is announcement number 3. Now, let's talk about what is really happening behind the headlines, because there are 2 stories playing out simultaneously, and the mainstream media is only covering one of them. The story you are hearing is about Israeli resilience, rapid grid restoration, and government assurances that security measures are being enhanced. Energy Minister Eli Cohen appeared on Israeli television within 12 hours of the attack to reassure the public that power had been restored, that no permanent damage had occurred, and that investigations were underway. Prime Minister Netanyahu convened an emergency security cabinet meeting and released a statement promising that those responsible would face consequences. But the story you are not hearing is the one being discussed in closed-door briefings inside Israeli military headquarters. According to 3 separate sources cited by Axios, Israeli intelligence officials have presented evidence to the Security Cabinet that the attack involved not just Iranian planning, but direct participation by Hezbollah operatives based in southern Lebanon and sleeper cells inside Israeli territory. The evidence includes electronic intercepts, forensic analysis of explosive materials, and surveillance footage from sites near the Lebanese border. If that assessment is accurate, it means Iran did not just plan and fund this operation. It means Iranian-backed forces physically carried out the attacks inside Israeli territory without detection. It means Israel's internal security, despite decades of counterterrorism experience and billions invested in surveillance, failed to identify, track, or neutralize a multi-site sabotage operation. Israeli Defense Forces Chief of Staff Herzi Halevi responded by ordering what Israeli media is describing as the largest counterintelligence review in a decade. Every security contractor with access to critical infrastructure is being revetted. Every foreign worker with access to utility facilities is being investigated. Every security protocol at power substations, water plants, and communications hubs is being reassessed. This is not a routine security update. This is an admission that Israel's defensive perimeter has been penetrated at a level Israeli planners did not believe was possible. And here is where the regional implications become even more significant. If Iran can successfully execute this kind of operation inside Israel, why would they hesitate to do the same inside Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, or Jordan? All of these countries have normalized relations with Israel in recent years. All of them have critical infrastructure far less protected than Israel's. And all of them now have to reconsider whether their regional realignment was worth the security risk Tehran just demonstrated it can impose. If you are a government official in Riyadh or Abu Dhabi watching Iranian operatives successfully sabotage Israeli infrastructure, you are not thinking about economic partnerships. You are thinking about whether your own water systems, your own power grids, and your own energy facilities are vulnerable to the same kind of attack. That is the strategic message Tehran just sent to the entire region. Align with Israel, and we will make you pay a price you cannot defend against. This pattern has repeated throughout history, and every time it repeats, the outcome is the same. Think about the Peloponnesian War. Athens and Sparta, the 2 dominant powers in ancient Greece, fought for 27 years. Both sides exhausted their treasuries, decimated their populations, and destroyed their alliances. And who won? Persia. Persia did not fight the war. Persia funded whichever side was losing to ensure the conflict continued. When Athens and Sparta finally collapsed from exhaustion, Persia dominated the Eastern Mediterranean for the next century. Israel is Athens, Iran is Sparta. They are locked in a multi-decade conflict that neither side can decisively win. Every Israeli strike on Iranian nuclear facilities provokes Iranian retaliation. Every Iranian retaliation justifies further Israeli strikes. The cycle does not end, it escalates. And while both sides bleed resources and attention, who benefits? China is expanding its Belt and Road Initiative across the Middle East. Russia is selling weapons to both sides. The United States is spending billions to support Israel while simultaneously trying to negotiate with Iran. None of the primary combatants are winning. The powers watching from the sidelines are consolidating influence while Israel and Iran destroy each other incrementally. The parallel is exact, and if history is any guide, this conflict will not end with a decisive Israeli victory or a collapsed Iranian regime. It will end when both sides are too exhausted to continue and a third power steps in to dominate a region neither Israel nor Iran can any longer control. So, where does this leave us? Let me give you 3 clear paths, because there is no honest middle ground here. Path 1, Israel responds with large-scale airstrikes on Iranian military facilities, possibly including Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps bases and Iranian weapons manufacturing sites. This is the path Netanyahu's hardline coalition partners are demanding. It satisfies domestic political pressure. It demonstrates Israeli resolve. But it also guarantees Iranian counter-escalation, likely targeting Israeli embassies, Jewish communities abroad, or additional infrastructure inside Israel. This path leads to open conflict, increased regional instability, and potential U.S. military involvement. I assess the probability of this path at 35%. Path 2, Israel conducts a limited covert response, targeting Iranian operatives abroad while simultaneously accelerating infrastructure protection at home. This is the path Israeli intelligence services are likely recommending. It avoids open war. It maintains strategic ambiguity. It allows Israel to claim retaliation without triggering Iranian counterstrikes that would further destabilize the region. But it also requires acknowledging that Israel cannot prevent future Iranian sabotage, only mitigate it. This path leads to an indefinite, low-intensity conflict where both sides trade covert blows without resolution. I assess the probability of this path at 50%. Path 3, Israel accepts that its current security doctrine is unsustainable and pursues diplomatic de-escalation through third-party mediation, possibly involving China, Russia, or European powers. This is the path no Israeli politician can publicly advocate without committing political suicide. It requires admitting that military superiority does not guarantee security. It requires engaging with Tehran as an equal rather than an adversary to be defeated. But it is the only path that stops the cycle of retaliation that benefits neither Israel nor Iran. I assess the probability of this path at 15%, but it is the only one that does not lead to eventual catastrophe. I think we are closer to path 2 than the headlines suggest. Israel will strike back, but it will do so in ways that preserve deniability and avoid triggering the large-scale war Netanyahu cannot afford, politically or militarily. Tehran will continue refusing to confirm or deny responsibility, maintaining the strategic ambiguity that gives them operational freedom without legal accountability. And the rest of the world will watch as two regional powers slowly destroy each other while pretending they are winning. Here are the questions I want you to take away. First, if Israel cannot protect 15 power substations despite billions in defense spending, what other infrastructure is vulnerable? Second, if Iran can successfully execute coordinated sabotage inside Israeli territory, why would they stop at power grids? And third, how long can this cycle of retaliation continue before one side miscalculates and triggers a conflict neither side can control? Tell me in the comments what you think Israel does next. Tell me if you think Tehran's silence is admission or strategy. We will keep tracking every development in this crisis, every intelligence leak, and every operational indicator that tells us which path we are actually on. That is what this channel does every single day. Subscribe now. Share this analysis with everyone in your network who is trying to understand what is really happening in the Middle East beyond the headlines and the press conferences. Turn on notifications so you do not miss the next update, because this situation is not over. It is just beginning. We will see you in the next analysis.